Kids are economists. And economics, after all, is really nothing more than the study of how we allocate scarce resources. And there's really nothing more scarce, at least in my house, than Halloween candy. Now, what I'd like to talk to you came about as a result of a conversation in early November when my kids were talking about why their stomachs hurt so much. And what we started to talk about was the value of Halloween candy. And anytime you have value, you start to think about how to allocate it. Now, there was a group called myscienceproject.org. And what they wanted to do in great experimental fashion was figure out how much candy you could fit into a pillowcase. So very practical. And they didn't just want to have candy that was all the same. They said, let's figure out how much really good stuff we'll use. They defined that as chocolate bars. They said, let's figure out how much meh stuff there is. That was stuff in boxes, essentially. And finally, they wanted to include some of the gumdrops and the lollipops, really the bottom of the barrel. Now, wisely, they didn't even use the apples, because who really keeps an apple in the pillowcase? You just throw that away in the woods. Now, the reason that this caught my eye was I actually like the box stuff more than the chocolate. And so does one of my kids. This gets you to the first of the three concepts I want to talk to you about. It's called the subjective theory of value. So what something is worth doesn't have anything to do with how much it costs to produce. Its worth is determined by what you think it's worth. Now, the value for this is that, first of all, we saw oil yesterday. It costs $5 a barrel to produce. It sells for $96. It can sell for $126. It's worth what people are willing to pay. Now, for kids, this is very worthwhile because if they like different things, they can start to trade. And as they trade, they get rid of what they don't like, they gain more of what they do like, and they're both better off overall. Second big concept is a mouthful: diminishing marginal utility. Marginal is an important concept in economics. It means the value of the next thing that you're going to measure. So your marginal tax rate is the tax rate you pay on the next dollar you earn, not your overall tax rate. Utility is simply how much we value something, and we measure it in something we call utils, or units of pleasure. It's kind of like money, but for your personal enjoyment. So imagine your favorite candy, and what we're going to arbitrarily say is that that piece gives you 10 utils of pleasure. Cumulatively, you'll have 10 utils after the first piece of candy, none, obviously, if you had no candy. Your second piece of candy is okay, it's good, but it's only worth 8 utils. And cumulatively, you're at 18 total utils. Third piece of candy, you're slowing down. It's 5 utils. And altogether, you're at 23. Pieces 4 and 5, that's 1.5 utils and 0.5 utils. And if you extend this, piece 6, you might go negative, literally and figuratively. And what's interesting here is your curve has started to flatten out. And that's what diminishing marginal utility is all about. The next piece isn't as good as the last one. So the final concept that I want to leave you with is the notion of diversification. And diversification comes from portfolio theory, which started 40 years ago or so. But it's important along a whole bunch of different dimensions. And essentially, you just want to have different things, different in different ways, in your collection of stuff. A farmer, for instance, if he's going to plant 3 acres, he could plant 3 acres of wheat, but if there's a wheat blight, he's lost everything. If he plants wheat and soybean and corn, and there's a wheat blight, he's just lost 1/3 of his crop. Now, for Halloween candy, you want to diversify in the kinds of stuff you have. We just saw that, first of all, you're going to get tired of stuff, and then you have opportunities to trade. But also, you want to diversify in terms of where you keep it. Diversification literally means, in terms of Halloween candy, don't put all your candy in one basket, and you'll avoid disaster. Thank you.